name me one guy on the WWE roster that you can describe in a sentence or less. There are very few. Back in the Attitude Era, you could almost describe every single guy up and down the card.
I can ask anything I want?
Anything you want, anything at all. The only dumb one's the one you don't ask. So.
Then there might be some dumb questions then, if I don't ask them.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't ask them, if you never, nothing ventured, nothing gained. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can go and dig deep, go inside the psyche, go as far as you can, go into the dark recesses. I wouldn't go that dark, but I wouldn't go that recess, but I would, I'd go as far as you could.
Does Head have rules when it comes to asking questions?
Sometimes, shut up. No, because he gets a lot of views. I know. It's the internet. Remember, we've had this conversation. I know you don't watch YouTube. I get it. I understand. But you use it to watch porn all the time. And I've asked you to stop doing that because people believe when they pull up our search engine, it's me. And every time they punch an A, it comes Asian ass porn. They think it's my fault, and it's you. So stop it. Anyways.
Jeez, wow. No, I get it.
Yeah.
Has your theme song and your and this gimmick affected your personal life at all? Like, do people come up to you on the street and they're like, "Hey, what does everybody want?"
Oh God, all the time, yeah. And they're expecting me to give it, and it's like, no, listen, that's not what you think. And quite honestly, it wasn't quite what you think. It wasn't meant to be a double entendre. It really was meant to be what does everybody want, because I just figured if anyone had been pursuing what I'd been pursuing for as long as I've been pursuing it, that when you came out and everybody was cheering, but they weren't cheering me, they were cheering Head.
Yeah.
I know, because of course, obviously. No, I know. Okay? You can't give me a finger. You know why? Don't have any. Ha-ha! Anyway, the what does everybody want, what does everybody need? If you paid attention, I got upset the more I would say it. And I was hoping that I would, and we'd agreed upon this, so don't start complaining. I would at some, I would get jealous, and then I would turn on the Head, and we'd have an entire story where I was attacking them in the back and doing things like everybody else was doing, but I was literally doing it with Head. So, but everybody else, put their mind in the gutter, assumed it was something else than what it was.
Well,
which is fine.
I mean, it is in fact what everybody wants and what everybody needs.
And what everybody loves. Yeah. I mean, come on, even Jared Leto, you can't blame him.
Oh yeah, what'd you think of that?
It was total gimmick infringement, but you know what? God bless you. Good for you. It worked for me. If it hadn't been for the grace of God and a plastic head, I wouldn't have had a career. So I don't blame you. Use it to resurrect yours. It did for me. So
I feel like you'd find a way to get over no matter what.
Some way, somehow, I'm going to figure something out.
Yeah.
But I found Head. We met eyes across the room, New Britain, Connecticut. Instant. We knew it was chemistry. It was. You know that. You've admitted to it. It was immediately love.
Anybody who watches my channel, watches my interviews, know that I wear collar and elbow all the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
How did you get involved with the company?
Rod Hicks and Dean Whitaker and myself, we were having a conversation about the fact that, I was mistaken, but I just didn't feel like there was a brand per se that epitomized the passion that wrestling fans have for wrestling, not just professional wrestling, but for catch as catch can, jiu-jitsu, judo. I mean, it's all grappling, and we were making jokes about WWE, and because of course it's easy because it's the biggest target to hit, but they have those really heavy, thick, cottony Gildan shirts,
AKA the cheap shirts.
Right? Yeah, and I get it. They've got an overhead, but. But you've got a picture of a man's face, and I'm sorry, but I'm a grown man. I don't want to walk around with another man's face on my chest. And, I know that Under Armour had football, Nike had, represented kind of like basketball and running and things of that nature. So we decided we'd try to come up with something that epitomized, wrestling fans, their passion and their love for professional wrestling, and do it in a way that come up with designs that, if you're wearing it in public and you're around, let's say not at a wrestling show, but you're at a family event, and you get the guy that decide, he's like, hey, well, you like that stuff, it's fake. And you're like, oh, congratulations, Angela Lansbury. No wonder you quit Murder, She Wrote. You've taken up your own detective agency and been able to piece together the clues and ascertain that, a long-standing, professional event is now fake. Wow, what a surprise. Congratulations. Sherlock Holmes has nothing on you. So
I think people are surprised to see the shape that you're in right now. And, congrats on the physique that you have now.
Thank you.
Do you wish that you had this physique when you were in WWE?
Well, I wish I had this physique, even before WWE. I mean, I wish that I had this physique for years, but everybody's like, well, he's on steroids and all that. Yeah. I wish. That would be awesome.
Can you imagine how big you'd be if you were on steroids?
And it would be fantastic.
Except for the health, thing.
But those haven't been proven. But anyway. Yeah. But a lot of it did come from the fact that of muscle maturity. I mean, a lot of people don't realize this. I've been training since I was 16, trying to be, bigger and more muscular and also more athletic. And so you get a lot of muscle maturity, and that comes with time. And the other aspect was that I started learning how to properly train. I had trained, nobody had taught me, nobody explained anything. I was very self-taught and made a lot of mistakes. And when I started training the proper way, that was when things started to change and my physique started to.
So what specifically did you change?
The one big thing that I changed was that I'm not a bodybuilder. Like my wife is a competitive bodybuilder, and she trains completely different than me. She gets frustrated with me all the time. I started training like a professional wrestler, and I went on the internet, and I would encourage anyone to Google like George Hackenschmidt, a wrestler back in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, and a lot of strongmen back in that time, and they looked amazing. I mean, quite honestly, they were incredible physiques, they were in incredible shape, and were able to perform incredible feats of strength. And this was during a time when clearly they didn't have chemical enhancement. They didn't have doping or anything of that nature. Yeah. They didn't know what a carb was. They didn't even know what calories were. And yet these people were in amazing condition. And I thought, I'm going to start to train like they do. And literally the minute that I started to train like they did, it changed everything for me. So yeah. I do a lot of unconventional, according to the typical when you go to the gym type of training now, and a lot of people just stop and stare and like, I'm sure I'm on, all of those Instagram of videos where it's the gym fuckery and all of those ones that somebody's standing watching me with a camera going, what the hell is this? But it works. Yeah. I mean, it really does. And the difference is, one big thing that I learned when I was, all you can do is sit on the treadmill, and as you go down, I pick you up and put you back on. That's all you can do. I know. Well, you could lift if you had arms, right? We'll talk about it when we get to the room.
The best gimmick.
I swear to God. It never ends. You know what I mean?
I don't know how you do it.
Ends with you either. Completely distracted me.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I, like other wrestling fans, of course, read Mick Foley's books.
Yeah.
And I was expecting, when I heard that Al Snow was going to have a book, I was totally expecting that you would take some jabs back at Mick. You did not do this, though, in your new book, Self-Help.
No, I did not. I mean, come on. He lives a life and looks the way he does. This is not enough of a jab. And, I remember back in the day when Mick was talking to everybody in the locker room, he's like, oh, you know what, I can't wait to, when I get done wrestling, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. We all laughed, and now he's a stand-up comedian and no one's laughing. So,
Your book's called Self-Help. I have it right here, actually. It's Self-Help.
Yes.
Life lessons from the bizarre wrestling career of Al Snow.
Yes.
What's the most bizarre thing in your career?
Well, I really, that would be tough to just pick one. I'll give you the highlights of it was like a 3-4 hour trip one night from a wrestling show that involved all little people, where I had to take a van ride back with those little people, 6 of them to be exact. So it was kind of Al Snow and the Six Dwarfs. And the highlights were one of them on blocks of wood so that they could operate the gas and brake pedals, continually arguing with me about the fact that they were a grown adult and had a driver's license and could drive, a 36 pack of beer that you never want to mix alcohol and small people. Of course, they were all completely shit-faced drunk. Me, hey, let's stop at the Ihop. Big mistake. Why? It's about 3 in the morning. What's in there in 3 in the morning? Lots of normal drunk people. I'm walking in with 6 of these. And then little person fight. Then me wanting to fight a little person, almost about to knock him out. And then we get banned from IHOP, which is where I lost it. And then we're back in the van. And then we convince one of them to get naked. And then we pull up in front of cars, open the doors. He's standing in the back with the dome light on. And then he falls out of the back of the car, the van. And we have to pull off real quick because he almost dies. So that's just a highlight.
But are you still banned from IHOP?
I certainly hope not. I mean, come on, let's face it. I mean, there's Denny's, there's IHOP, but then there's Waffle House. And if you've ever ate at a Waffle House, it's the most amazing experience because you're
life-changing.
Yeah, because you're guaranteed a dinner and a floor show every time. You know, my best story from Waffle House, and it's the shortest one that I can tell, is that the waitress literally brought to me my waffle with her thumb on my waffle, and I was like, "Excuse me, your thumb's on my waffle." She goes, "Yeah, you want me to drop it again?" And just sat it down and walked off, and I was like, I guess not. So I ate the waffle. So.
I know that you bought OVW about a year ago. Is that right? Obviously, you were working with OVW for a long time. What was the thought process and the business plan into buying it, going into buying it?
How all of that occurred is that, and a lot of people might get upset about this, about what I'm saying, is that I felt like, and I still feel, that there are no real standards, like when it comes to training prospective athletes, young men and women. 2 things. One, no standards as far as training young men and women to get into wrestling properly, and holding them to a certain standard of conditioning. I don't just mean cosmetically, because it is a cosmetic business, let's face it, but it also requires a certain amount of stamina and athletic conditioning and performance. And I know for a fact that's not there. When I first broke into professional wrestling, it was a very closed, very secular business, and part of the reason it was, and then why it was so difficult to get in, is that if I trained you, I was held personally responsible for everything you did, and that reflected back on me, and if I did anything negative, then at some point you would be blackballed. You would no longer be able to make a living in professional wrestling. So guys were very reticent to be willing to train somebody, knowing that they were held accountable for whoever they broke in. The other part of it, as far as for young men and women, was that we have a great, Roddy Piper said it best, is we have a great way to teach you skills to get into professional wrestling, and we have no way to teach you skills to get out of it. Whether your career comes to an end as far as injuries or just because of attrition, which happens on a regular basis, or like me, I've been doing this for 37 years. If I were to now walk out in the real world and try to apply for a job, it'd be like, what have you been doing for the last 37 years? Well, I've been fake fighting another man for money in his underwear. And they'd be like, huh, really? Well, I don't think we have a spot in Amazon for you, but we'll keep you in mind. You know what I mean? If we ever need you to fake fight a guy in his underwear,
you're our guy.
You're our guy.
Well, you were talking about making OVW a vocational school.
Right.
Has that been approved? Is that happening?
We have provisional approval. We just have to finish. The application for this thing is it's ridiculous.
People need to understand how big that's a really big thing to be able to do.
And that was the motivation for all of it, was that when I went to the Kentucky, I spoke to a commissioner with the Maryland State Athletic Commission. I spoke to a commissioner with the Oklahoma State Boxing and Wrestling Commission. And I went and actually addressed the board of the Kentucky State Wrestling Commission because I found it appalling, and I still do, and I find it insulting. And my lovely wife, who is a licensed masseuse, if you want to be anything in any state in the union, you want to be a licensed vocation, whether it be a beautician, you want to be a barber, you want to be a mortician, you want to be a masseuse, you've got to go to a state-approved training center. You have to go to have a state-accredited trainer. You have to go for a certain number of state-approved hours, and then you have to take a state-approved test before you can get a license. No matter what state in the union you're in, if there is a wrestling and boxing commission, you pay your money, take a physical, and ta-da, you're magically the professional wrestler, and which is absurd. I find that insane. So, I just, Danny Davis was thinking of retiring, and we had a conversation, and next thing you know, like a lunatic, I decided, hey, you know what would be fun? Let's become a promoter and run things on a regular basis. And oh my God, little did I know. And then that evolved, because I've always felt that unlike MMA or boxing, it's not a competitive athletic pursuit. We are actually teaching young men and women skills to pursue a vocation. And I didn't just want to teach them skills to pursue the vocation on the inroad, because, and I use these two people as example. Jessie Whitney, who's Tommaso Ciampa's beautiful wife, she was a contestant on Tough Enough 2. She got eliminated. She came back on her own volition as an intern with MTV's production team. She got hired as a backstage producer for WWE and went on to become a television producer for Fox, ABC, NBC. Still has an amazing career. And then James Long started as an in-ring performer with OVW years ago. He literally taught himself lighting, how to operate a camera, sound, editing. He got so good that I helped him get hired by TNA as part of their production crew, and then went on now to be hired by WWE, and he's head of their NXT, their experimental production facility. So, I know it's possible. So we decided not to just create a trade school, which is unheard of for professional wrestling, but we have, but a trade school for both sports entertainment and broadcasting as well. So if you're an in-ring performer, you'll learn those behind the scenes and outside of the ring skills to, one, make you a better performer, but at the end of your run, at the end of where you physically can actually get in the ring and compete or perform, you have skills that give you an exit plan to either allow you to continue to have a career within sports entertainment or go pursue a career in television or broadcasting anywhere you want, because undoubtedly, you learn skills in professional wrestling that you don't learn anywhere else. You quite honestly, whether you're an in-ring performer or you're a camera operator, or you're a backstage producer, or you're anything, you learn how to think in a moment's notice and how to produce live TV, which just doesn't exist in any other form in entertainment. So, it gives these guys a skill set that places them when their careers end in the ring to be able to have an exit plan and be able to leave. And it's such an important thing, because I think that if we create this situation, it maybe possibly could mitigate all of the early deaths of some of these young athletes, that have died at an early age, that they can then go on and have another career that they still feel like they're fulfilled and can pursue. And it's so important that, like, even NFL has created a program where they teach quite literally teach the NFL football players how to not be an NFL football player off the field when they're on the field careers end, because you're talking about men and women who have pursued an athletic endeavor since, especially like with football, when they were probably 8 to 10 years old with Pee Wee football, to where they were then in junior high, high school, college, and now they're an NFL football player, and then they can't play football anymore. What do they do? And not everybody can be, the big name stars that, have marketing contracts or licensing. They make their money, and contrary to popular belief, they of course make a lot of money, but they also have to spend a lot of money to make that money. So it's not like they, at the end of the day, they may very well not have the means to just, I'm just going to retire and live off of what I got to do for the next 30, 40, 50 years, because they might end their careers in 30 years.
With OVW being the developmental territory for Impact Wrestling, and you working as an Impact agent for a long time, everyone's talking about how AEW is going to possibly affect WWE. Right. What kind of effect is AEW going to have on Impact?
I think that AEW in general is going to have a positive impact on everyone because it's going to bring attention. It's going to bring back maybe some audience members that kind of faded away after the early 90s. And generate interest by the general wrestling audience. I'm hoping that, AEW doesn't just market themselves to wrestling fans. Not that I don't love wrestling fans, because, if it wasn't for wrestling fans, I wouldn't have a job, Sure. I'd be back to just doing magic for the blind. Not that that's a bad thing, okay? I could do it for you now, but, I
could close my eyes.
Yeah, and I have to say ta-da a lot, you don't know anything happened. It's like, is this your card? And they're like, I don't know. And you're like, it is, ta-da. And they're like, oh my God, how'd you do it? It's pretty incredible. I'd have to say, you'd have to see it, but then it screws up the whole gimmick. But I don't want I hope that they don't just market themselves to just a existing wrestling audience, because the problem with that is that New Japan, even WWE to a degree now, Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, they're all marketing themselves to that marginalized, already existing wrestling audience. And where WWE's real success has always lied in the fact that they have marketed themselves, Vince is marketing himself to the general audience. And if we can do that, and the more broader appeal we get, and the more mainstream interest we garner, the more the wrestling business as a whole starts to thrive. And I can only hope that AEW goes on to be as successful as possible. Not to mention, I've trained, Cody Rhodes back when he first came into OVW, and so the more he's successful, the more I feel I'm successful. Yeah. So, good. I'm thrilled and couldn't be happier for him, and, I hope that he just goes and changes things and does whatever he wants to do, so.
I loved the hardcore title, and I loved the hardcore title rules that were defended anywhere. Do you think WWE should bring back the hardcore title?
I don't think so. I think it was the right thing at the right time for the right reason. It kind of organically kind of developed out of it being a joke for Mick Foley, and then it just grew from there. And I think that if they were to try to do it now, we in OVW, before I took over, the creative team had came up with a similar title called an Anarchy Title, which is where the champion could, basically it was anarchy. He could call his own stipulations no matter how ridiculous or whatever he wanted to do. Yeah. And I explained that in this day and age, I think it's hard, because if every time you have that title on the show and it has a stipulation, it now waters down the stipulations for matches that you have a personal vendetta or a reason that they have to be in this type of a match. And yet this match, you just walk out and it's, I want to put a dildo on a pole match, and first guy up the pole gets the dildo, he gets to use it on his other guy.
I always wondered who was paying for the damages, because you guys were breaking anything and everything in sight. Like, did WWE just get a bill from the venue at the end of the night?
Pretty much, yeah.
Were you ever told, like, all right, tonight, Al, just try not to break anything?
No, and that's the thing, is that people were, Vince does not dictate to you. And a lot of people believe that he does, and I know that in this day and age, a lot of the talent are dictated, but quite honestly, back in the day, producing wise, they were like, hey, and it was you walked out in the ring, and I tell guys all the time, it's your responsibility. It's up to you. It's your canvas. It's up to you to create and do whatever you want to do as much as you want to do. So, like when Bob Holly and I, went into the Mississippi River, which I didn't really think that one through. It was greasy, and it was a lot colder than I thought it would be, and a lot deeper, and a lot faster, and Bob's a lunatic and tried to drown me. So,
But if you put someone through a wall, they would just be like, all right, we'll get someone to fix it later.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they think about it. They paid how much money to pour cement into a Corvette that they said was Vince's. They blew up a bus, Yeah. I mean, they have the budget to produce television, and they just take it into account. And me in OVW, I'm like, what'd you do? You put him through the wall? Jesus Christ, I gotta pay for that. So
since your book has a lot of life advice in it, and someone's watching this and maybe they don't enjoy their job or they don't enjoy what they're doing, period. Yeah. What's the best advice that you have for someone like that?
Two things. One, you're not a tree, so you can get up and leave anytime you want. If you don't enjoy it, don't do it. And two, that, you can be and do anything you want to do if you want to do it bad enough. If you want something bad enough, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. People will tell you whatever they want to tell you, but you make your life. Your choices, your decisions, you are a product of those. And that honestly was why when people finally convinced me to write the book, I wanted to, the original title, like I told you before, was, how to take shit and make shoe polish and other life lessons I learned from wrestling. And I've learned a lot of stuff, and I've become the person I've become because of the experiences I've had. Some of them you can only experience in wrestling. But every time it made me understand that, the one thing about life is that it's relentless. It always moves. It always goes forward. Tragedy will happen, bad things will occur, and guess what? Tomorrow the sun comes up and you got to figure a way to pick yourself up and go. You can't lay in the mud and just go, well, I can't do it. There is no can't. You got to figure out a way to go and move forward and literally take shit and make shoe polish. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it is. And you can, I know everybody tells you that, you hear all the gurus, but you can make your life whatever you want to make it, and you only get treated the way you're willing to be allowed to be treated. And that's the truth. You complain about your job and you complain about how you treat you. That's because you're staying there and you're allowing them to treat you that way. Yeah. You can make a choice and you can go somewhere else. Well, I can't find a job. Oh, you can find a job. If you start looking, at some point you'll find a job. Will you move laterally? Will it, income-wise, won't be any better? It might not be any better. Situationally, will it be any better? You never know until you try. Yeah. But if you keep staying, you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, and that is the definition of insanity. And I understand people say I'm sick, but you're the one who has the illness.
I think the best way I've heard it put is, want to change your life, change your standards.
And make a change, make a conscious decision. The most important thing you can do is make a conscious decision. Don't be a victim. Make a decision that, hey, I want to do something different. And then make the decision to actually go and do something different. Don't just sit there. Don't just accept the way that your life is. Make it whatever you want to do. I'm a direct result of every decision, and I've owned up to a lot of mistakes. I talk about a lot of things that even my family do not know anything about, and I am dreading my mother reading this book and some of my kids. I have 6 kids, I have 6 grandchildren, and I am absolutely, the biggest thing that I'm fearing is when they read that book, because there are a lot of mistakes I honestly I owned up to, and I took my responsibility and part and parcel for what I did and how I was a part of it and the decisions that I made to make those things happen. And not just in the wrestling in the ring in my career, but in my personal life too. And I learned lessons from that, and I just own up to it, because it's not, I can't put it on the other person who, I literally had a girl fake her own death, and I was under investigation for murder for 2 weeks. And I can't blame her. I can. I mean, hello, But I have to blame myself too, because of my part in the relationship, because that would have never happened if I had made certain decisions to make that occur. I would have been fine. So
this announcement is happening behind us as the doors are about to open here. So, but as we wrap things up, what do you think's missing from wrestling right now?
What do I think is missing from wrestling?
Or maybe nothing's missing from wrestling right now.
No, actually there is. And that is the understanding that there's only one thing that's quote-unquote fake about wrestling, and that is that the outcome is already predetermined. And the understanding by the talent, the wrestlers themselves, they think that that's something new. And that, quite honestly, I try to explain to them that, like, literally since the 30s, people have known that wrestling is not real. They know that it's not a competitive situation. But the biggest things that they could always believe in, okay, was who you are and why you're doing it. And now the wrestlers themselves, if you watch tonight, they try to make you believe in what they do. You'll never believe in what they do, and the reason you won't is because you can't physically relate to what they do.
Sure, yeah.
The reason baseball, football, and basketball, I tell them all the time, that the reason those three things have huge, enormous audiences is because we've all done them as children. We've all picked up a ball and we've all hit a bat. We've all picked a bat and hit a ball, even if it's just our backyard. We've all played football, even if it's at the family reunion. Yeah. We've all done basketball, even if it's just in the driveway. So when we watch it on TV, we have a physical relationship. That's why Canada has a bigger audience for hockey than the United States. More people have played it. Yeah. That's why soccer is bigger all over the rest of the world than it is in the United States, because everyone's played it. That's why soccer is growing as a sport in the United States, because we have more generations of fans that have actually physically played it. That's why cricket, which I'll never understand, is big, quite honestly, on the entire, there's not a country that doesn't have huge cricket leagues. Yeah. But we don't in the United States. We've never played it. So we don't relate to it. So as an audience, we won't watch it. Wrestling, if you've never stepped foot in a ring, you think everything in that ring is, quite honestly, physically fake. And nothing could be further from the truth. Physically, all of it is quite 100% real. It's the intent. It's the reasoning behind what you're doing that you're trying to get the audience to buy into and believe. And without that, there is no consequence to anything you physically do in the ring if there's not that win and loss at stake. And then if there's nothing at stake, there's no drama. If there's no drama, there's no heat, no drive, no need to watch to see the outcome. Yeah. And quite honestly, who are you? That's the one lesson I've learned in wrestling, is that allowed me to escape from hey, he's the best kept secret in wrestling, which was a great compliment for 2 years. Year 14, you're like, hey, could you please tell somebody? Come on, I'm begging you. But it's because I didn't have a definable character. Oh, you're great in the ring. Oh, you're a terrific wrestler. Great. Who are you? How can an audience describe you in a sentence or less? Yeah. There's this guy, he's A, B, C, D, E. Yeah. Oh my God. If I came to you right now and I said, you got to watch this wrestling show, there's this guy, he comes out, he's drinking beer, he's flipping his boss off, he's a redneck, he kicks ass, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Of course. And, even like Undertaker, he's a dead guy, he comes up from the grave, know exactly who he is, what he stands for, and what he'll do to win and not lose. Yeah. If you can establish that, and yes, I know, thank you. If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have had it. I get it, I understand. I was something before you understand? I had a career. Yeah, because Cornette, UFC, me, that's it. So, if you have that definable personality, then, and for an audience that they can turn to their friends and family who aren't fans, and they can go, you got to watch a show with me. There's this guy, he's blah, 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 blah. Yeah. That's what makes you a star. Yeah. That's what makes you an attraction. And in wrestling, that kind of went away. Name me one guy on the WWE roster that you can describe in a sentence or less. There are very few. Back in the Attitude Era, you could almost describe every single guy up and down the card that was, and think about it, the reason that's so important, not just for one or two people in the main event, but up and down the card, how much does it cost for you as an average person to go see a show? Yeah. And your mindset is, everyone that walks through that curtain better mean something to me, because I've just spent $35, $40, $45 to sit in one of these seats that I don't want to sit in, around people I clearly don't want to sit around. To pay for food I don't want to eat, to watch that guy do his job. And not just the main event, but every guy that walks out that curtain, and that was a big thing, I think, that led to a lot of the success of the Attitude Era and WWE. And I think that's a big thing that the focus has moved so far away of in professional wrestling, that it's more about what they do as performers and not who they are and why they're doing it.
That's great advice. Al Snow, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was great.
Oh, I hope so. I appreciate you wearing the collar and elbow, and check them out, collarandelbowbrand.com. Follow me, The Real Al Snow, because actually there were fakes on social media, and I would go and tell people all the time, look, if you're going to be a fake, I would aim higher. I mean, if I'm going to fake being a celebrity, it's not going to be me. Come on.
I didn't see you there. So if you watched my last interview with Dasha Fuentes here in my house, welcome into my house once again. You saw the grand piano sitting in the background, and a lot of people were commenting, oh my God, he has a full-size piano in his house. Actually, no, it's a baby grand piano in my house, and I didn't see you there as I was playing Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven. A lot of nuggets of knowledge there from Al Snow. Great to hear him talking about his take on the business now, and how exciting is it that OVW could be a vocation, could be a thing that you go to like a trade school, like becoming a mechanic or a plumber or something like that. We talked about his book. There it is once again, Self-Help. He left me a very nice note in the book. To Chris, thank you so much for your help with Collar and Elbow, and thank you for the interview. You're the best. Wow, I think Al Snow's writing actually might be messier than mine. We mentioned it in the interview, Collar and Elbow. I'm wearing another one of their shirts here. You've seen them in a lot of interviews. You can use my code CVV10 to get 10% off your next order. I'll of course put a link below if you want to check that thing out. The piano playing, okay, let me get to that. It's something that I wanted to do at the start of the year. You know that my phrase is vague goals get vague results. So specific goals get specific results. So at the start of the year, I determined that I want to learn a new skill every single year. This year, my skill is to learn how to play piano, and I've never played before in my life. So in January, I started taking lessons. Here we are in May, and I can kind of play something a little bit, but the reason I wanted to learn how to play piano is because it's not easy. And I think we should be constantly pushing ourselves to get better and better and better. A lot of that knowledge was in the interview there with Al Snow. So you'll have to let me get back to the piano playing here, but I'll put some other interviews down here if you want to check them out. And if you don't already, please comment on this video and subscribe as well. We will see you soon.